Welcome to the Crack House Chronicles, your favorite true crime podcast. I am Donnie, and with me is a man that says, once the thrill of being married to a stripper is over, you're just left with a person who always has change for $5. It's Dale.
What the hell? Yeah, she's one of them bipolars.
Yeah.
She got two of them, I guess.
That reminds me of just a little quick story. I went to years ago, I went to a bachelor party. It was Tony Pavell. I don't know if he listened to this or not. I don't know if his wife listened to this or not, but
anyway,
went to his bachelor party, and they had a stripper come in, and she was really good, but she did a little break there between, I guess, acts or sets or something, and everybody got talking to her and getting to know her, and then the next set come up, and it just wasn't as great as the first one because you knew her, and it's almost kind of like watching your sister strip after that. So it just, yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah, it was weird. What's going on, dude?
Not same old, I guess. With your sister stripper.
Yeah, that's kind of what it felt like.
Sister stripper. This make it be a Night Ranger song.
Okay, couldn't it? Any good shout-outs, dude? Anybody want to talk about?
Well, how about that?
Love that clap.
We have it's better than the alternative.
You got that right.
We have a brand new Apple Podcast 5-star review coming in, and this comes from Doctor Who Companion, all one word. And it says, "Love these guys!" Exclamation point. Love that part. Just found this podcast, and what a gem.
Wow.
GEM, not like workout gym.
Oh, yeah.
So it's
because
cool.
I'm not going to GYM.
Or a GYN.
No, I'm not going to one of them either.
Oh, maybe you can take your sister stripper on there.
OBGYN Kenobi.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
We better get started. We're getting way on the weeds.
Oh, yeah. Anybody else wants to go to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star, please do it. It helps the ratings and it helps people find us and gives us more attention.
That's right. We appreciate it. We've got like 184 of them, so we could use a few more.
Yeah, I mean, we love giving shout-outs.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. And
shout it out loud. We
you
can learn that from Kiss.
You can go to Spotify and leave a rating there, and you can comment on episodes and stuff, and we get notifications from them sometimes we don't.
Right.
But yeah, we get you can give that 5-star there, and it will help people find us there also.
Remember, put something in the box.
You have
that
to.
way you'll let us know.
That's right. Other than that, dude, we're going to get going in this episode.
Let's roll, bro.
Yeah, because we're back in North Carolina on this one.
After last week, we need a little bit of break.
After that, old Randy Kraft.
Rough.
Yeah, but we're back in North Carolina, but we're talking about a serial killer.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, and this is a woman serial killer.
This is a whole different kind of torture.
It is. It's a whole different. But it is North Carolina. It's pretty close to us, actually.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But we're talking today about a lady by the name of Blanche Taylor Moore.
Blanche Taylor Moore.
Yeah, she was born on February the 17th, 1933 in Concord, North Carolina.
That is just down the road, isn't
It is, just a little over an hour away. But she was born to parents Parker Davis Kaiser, who was known as PD. That's what he went by. And her mom was Flonnie Blanche Honeycutt Kaiser. Now, Blanche, she was the 5th child of 7 to her parents PD and Flonnie Kaiser.
Right.
Blanche's father, he was some kind of minister, what they called a primitive preacher.
Yeah.
And these primitive preachers, I guess around here in North Carolina, they're the kind that just believe in this absolute predestination, that
they was called to do it.
Yeah.
They're not those college ordained preachers, right?
Yeah, they're just called by God to do it.
Right.
Yeah, they don't get an education to do it.
Yeah. So you can see one on the side of the road here.
Yeah, and they have small congregations around, and you could see signs around where they have primitive congregations and primitive churches. But that's pretty much what it's all about.
Right.
Now, when Blanche was 9 years old, Dale, they moved from Concord to Burlington, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is where Blanche's father, PD, he started working on and off in the mills there, and Flonnie, her mom, she worked in the mills too.
Right.
And dude, I'll tell you, mill work is back-breaking work.
Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, and Flonnie, her mom, was doing this to help support the family. But her father, PD, he was hard drinking.
I guess this preaching wasn't paying too much.
No, and he was drinking pretty hard, and he was also known as a womanizer. And this was often from the women in his congregations.
Yeah, I'm sure that didn't last long.
No. And Flonnie, the mom, she wasn't blind to this, and she put up with it.
Yeah.
She did. But PD, he had abandoned his family. And
yeah, Merry Christmas, 1956.
Yeah, sure did. Right there at Christmas time, 56.
Man.
But by this time,
The
Blanche...
preachers are shady, ain't they?
Yeah, they're shady. But by this time, Blanche, she had already moved out of the house.
Mm.
Yeah, she had gotten married and moved out, and she was married to a guy by the name of James Napoleon Taylor.
Sweet name.
Yeah, named after the ice cream. But they were married in May of 1952, and this was 7 years before Flonnie, her mom, filed for divorce.
Hmm.
And she would even say later that her husband PD was leaving her to find a younger woman.
Yeah. She had to state that in court, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was stated.
Yeah.
And the court did award her alimony, and it was reported that PD did pay the alimony.
Right.
He was a younger woman.
Yeah, he's done, wasn't he?
Yeah. But along with the hard drinking, PD was abusive and physically and emotionally violent toward him.
Hmm.
Yeah, he was.
He was even known to have Blanche. He would force her to have sex with men he owed money to from his gambling debts and everything else. So, yeah, he's pretty shady character.
Yeah, I just wondered how old she was when that was going on.
I don't know. I couldn't find out.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Yeah.
matter, does it really?
No, it doesn't. But, you know, I'm sure this had an effect on her later on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, damn.
Can't even imagine.
No. Ridiculous.
There's some experts said this kind of behavior, depression, anxiety, and anger, impulsive behavior.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, you just don't get over that.
Mm-mm. And they even go even further to say it gives gastrointestinal issues.
Hmm.
And Blanche even was reported to have some of these, and she suffered from many of these issues, even diarrhea or constant diarrhea as it was reported.
That's wild.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if it just messed her up pretty bad.
Yeah, sounds like it.
But as Blanche was an older woman, it was documented that she behaved some inappropriately around some people.
Yeah, for some people, I guess.
Even though she was a Christian woman, people were shocked when she would make sexually suggestive remarks and even tell obscene jokes.
Right.
But it was reported she had numerous affairs and did little to hide them, Dale.
She didn't care, did she?
No, she didn't. But she also put up with a great deal of abuse, according to her daughters, and her dysfunctional relationships. And it even reported that she had some PTSD at one time.
Yeah, probably from putting up with all that.
Probably so, yeah.
And that and childhood sexual abuse, too.
Yeah. But by the time Blanche's first marriage, she had quit school, and she was already working several jobs. She was working in department stores in downtown Burlington, and she was doing this to support herself and buy her own clothes and keep herself up.
Living her lifestyle, man.
Yeah, because, you know, I've seen pictures of Blanche, and there's not many of her younger.
Right.
There's just much older, especially during the trial that we're going to get into later. But she was known to be a pretty woman.
Dressed, yeah.
Immaculate dressed, like Dale said, and very pretty woman.
Yeah.
But I don't see it as, when she's older, I don't know if the things of her life hit her pretty hard, and it just...
Well, and that's also probably comparably to other women in the 50s. I mean, you know.
Very true.
We just hear what everybody said, you know, how beautiful she was with her jet black hair and her high cheekbones and immaculately dressed, and always, you know, she did hardly ever seen without makeup. She was always there and had her hair done. I mean, she was tried to be top of the line, nothing else. And she was also very voluptuous and curvy, and she's really proud of her small waist and all this. So she was doing it up.
Yeah.
Putting it out there.
Oh, yeah. And like we talked about, she was married to James Taylor in May of 1952 when she was 19 years old.
Right.
And he was 5 years older than her, and he was born in 1927 in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And her husband was one of 11 kids.
Man, boy, they had some kids.
Yeah, in a very clannish family. And he was uneducated, and it was reported he was kind of the black sheep of the family. He always needed family loans and stuff, and he got a family loan to get his first house and just different things. But he was also a World War II veteran, and he was pretty gifted in restoring and rebuilding fine furniture. But within the first year of their marriage, Blanche, she gave birth to their first daughter. Her name was Vanessa.
Right.
And it was 6 years later, She had a daughter, Cynthia, who went by Cindy. And shortly after Cindy's birth, Blanche started working at a Kroger. This is a supermarket. I don't know if they have them all over the U.S., but they had them here in North Carolina at one time.
Yeah.
Kroger supermarket.
Used to have one here in town. It didn't last long, though.
I know. But she was working at this Kroger on Church Street in Burlington, and she was a checkout girl. And Dale, get this, she would go on to work for Kroger for 32 years.
Wow.
And from almost the beginning of her job there, her ambition took her to the highest level she could get as a female checker. She was the head cashier, which meant she supervised other cashiers, bag boys, and people who were stocking the shelves.
Mm-hmm.
So that was her job.
Right.
And her coworkers learned early on that Blanche was willing to play the games to do what she needed to do to get ahead.
Right.
Yeah. And
yeah, she knew how to use what she had, basically.
Yeah, flaunt her physical stature and
flirt with who she needed to be, and get everybody just to like her.
That's right. And
but it wasn't just the men. I mean, the women loved her too. Seemed to be, because she always remembered everybody's names and always remembered to ask customers about their family and what was going on with their loved ones and stuff. And it was reported that people would even stand in her line to check out through her to talk to her, even when other people had no line.
That's right.
So it's pretty wild. And that would be men and women, so it wasn't just one way.
Mm-hmm. But the customers loved her, Dale.
Yeah.
And she flirted with management from the beginning to work her way up.
Yeah, that would come from a lot of coworkers. They knew what was going on, yeah.
And if you got on her bad side, she would be vindictive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what some coworkers said. And
so she was kind of
two-faced.
Double-sided, yeah, two-faced.
Mm-hmm. She could be underhanded, and apparently some cashiers felt like she was kind of loose with the money bags around the store. It was reported that there were some registers that would come up short in money.
Right, because she was always the one who was in charge of going and switching out the drawers and the money bags and distribution.
Yeah.
And so she would swap them out, and sometimes stuff got missing.
Yeah, and I'd read online, too, that there was one person that had commented on something somebody had posted that it was reported around town. There was some rumors that money would get gone from the Kroger supermarket there.
Mm-hmm.
So these were first-hand accounts there in town. But by 1959, the year her mother had filed for divorce, Blanche was promoted to head cashier, and her relationship with her husband, James, was falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
This was according to friends and family. And they said that his aging played a part in this, because he was in his 40s, and he was balding and starting to grow a belly. That's what they said.
He also said that, Blanche had lost interest in him sexually, but I think a lot of that was due to all this other infidelity stuff she had going on at the grocery store.
Yeah, I think so, too.
I really don't know about it being bald in the belly was the main cause of this. I just think she had other activities.
Yeah, because during this time, when she was losing interest in her husband, she started selling Tupperware.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody knows Tupperware, this is
plastic bowls.
This is what you put spaghetti in to leave a stain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before you could go buy 10 for $1.
Yeah.
You got 10 for one of these, but they last forever.
And her selling this Tupperware was her usual excuse for being away at night.
We're having a Tupperware party.
Yeah, but her family, they only had one car.
Right.
And James, her husband, constantly questioned her on how she was able to use a company Kroger supermarket car after hours.
That kind of weirds me out. I never realized that you could use a company car.
I didn't know supermarkets had
a grocery store.
I didn't know Kroger's or supermarkets had a company car.
Right, yeah. That detail always makes me look twice. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, but she would use this company Kroger car after hours.
Well, she was the head cashier, so maybe she was just going to go visit.
Yeah, it could be. But coworkers recalled an ugly scene. This is when her husband, James, he was drunk, and he came into the store there at Kroger to confront his wife, Blanche.
Yeah, because he knew what was going on.
Yeah, and the assistant manager that she was having an affair with, he screamed at him, "Are you fucking my wife?"
Mm-hmm. Right in front of everybody.
Yeah, before he was escorted off the premises.
I bet he was.
Yeah.
He was pissed, and she was probably embarrassed, and boy, I bet she didn't like that at all.
Mm-mm. And it was even reported at one time by one of her daughters that James, her husband, was throwing pudding in his wife's face, and she refused to answer him about where she was going.
That was probably some kind of argument where he's like, asking her questions, she wouldn't say something, you got pissed off and probably threw it at her and then that kind of thing. I don't know. It's kind of odd. It's a weird detail to me.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's what you really want to do is start pissing her off.
He just won't know if she was having an affair. Or,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they got into a fight one time, and Blanche was getting into the car, and he slammed the car door and it caught her coat, and he actually drug her down the street with hanging on to the side of the car.
Okay. That ain't nice.
That ain't good at all.
No. And not long after this, that's when he had a fairly serious heart attack.
He did.
But then, he had these symptoms, where he was short of breath and vomiting and had some diarrhea and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Serious symptoms going on here.
But James was also a drinker and a gambler, and by the early 1960s, he had joined a Baptist church and really tried to be a good father to turn his life around. And Blanche had always been close to James's mother, Isla.
Mm-hmm.
And she seemed...
Yeah, he always wanted to sit by her at the family functions.
Yeah.
Hang out with her.
But she would criticize James to Isla.
Yeah.
Who would just pretend not to notice.
Yeah, she didn't want to hear it.
No, she didn't.
Blanche is pretty slick.
She is.
She knows all the angles and how to play it.
Mm-hmm.
And this keeps coming up over and over when you just pay attention.
That's right. So by September of 1966, Blanche's father, P.D. Kaiser, he died suddenly at the age of 62. And the cause of death was ruled to be heart disease because he had been a heavy drinker and a smoker, so no one really questions his death.
Right.
At least not then, anyway. And then, in November of 1970, Isla, this is Blanche's mother-in-law, she had become more critical of Blanche. She fell ill and was bedridden and died at home. And her official cause of death was a cerebral hemorrhage.
Yep.
But just a few years prior, Blanche, she had met a young assistant manager there at this Kroger she was working at.
Mm-hmm.
And his name was Raymond Reed.
Right.
But he was about 3 years younger than her. And he had moved down to Burlington with his family from Virginia. And he was married to a woman named Linda, and they had a couple sons together.
Yeah.
And her affairs with assistant managers, while technically was, kind of frowned upon by the chain supermarket there.
Right. But people knew about it.
Yeah, they did.
They were kind of ignored.
They were. But Blanche, she understood, that there wasn't supposed to be any kind of affairs, and she sought to befriend Raymond, not to seduce him, but when he was made the manager of the store, she became pretty determined.
Well, I think she was wanting to be friends with him when he was the assistant manager to kind of cover for herself. So she's like, everybody knows what's going on, but if I'm good friends with the assistant manager here and we're buddies, he might take care of me.
Yeah.
Watch my back for me, and I might not get in trouble. But then when he made manager, she might switch gears here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she knew he liked watching television, just knew like Jimmy Swaggart and all that kind of stuff. So I think she started watching them too. That way they would have something to chat about at work and kind of a way to work her way into getting a little closer to him.
Take that little angle in, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in 1971, Raymond, the store manager,
Mm-hmm.
and his wife Linda, they divorced.
Mm-hmm.
In the following months, co-workers say Blanche and Raymond were now having an affair, and James, her husband, knew about it in September of 1973.
Right. So she's full on right now.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
So that same September of 73, her husband James was 45 at the time. He started having symptoms of what was thought was the flu. And he had a sore throat, some swollen glands, and terrible diarrhea.
Oh, no.
His hair was falling out, and he developed some blisters on his hands.
Hands and feet, both.
Yeah. And the doctors, they didn't really know what was wrong.
Right. They just say they didn't know and send him home.
Yeah.
And everything just kept getting worse.
It did. And during this time, the youngest daughter, Cindy, she was 14 at the time, and she was there at home to see all this.
Mm-hmm.
But the older daughter, Vanessa, she was 20 and already moved out.
Correct. Yeah, and old James, he's got to where it just kept getting worse and worse, and then that last night he just didn't feel like eating or nothing. So Blanche, come in and gave him some ice cream to soothe his sore throat.
Yeah.
And then again, about an hour later, he just starts writhing in pain, started vomiting violently. He just couldn't do it. He was all to hell, and Blanche told Cindy she would call the doctor in the morning, and made a bed for himself on the sofa.
Yeah. And that next morning, she found James dead
Mm.
and he had died on the morning of October the 2nd of 1973.
Right.
And the doctors ruled it to be a massive heart attack.
Wow. He's only 45.
Yeah. And he had a sister named Dot, and she later told the Charlotte Observer that it seemed kind of odd that the rest of the siblings lived to be ripe old age, but James was quite young at the time.
Yeah, which was weird.
Yeah.
And Charlotte Observer is a newspaper down in Charlotte.
Yes. And actually, Blanche, she stayed single for about 16 years. She was living her life. She actually said later that these were the happiest years of her life.
Yeah, I think old Raymond wanted to get married, but she just didn't want to. She didn't want to be married at all. That way, she had some independence, I think, well, I guess really, I mean, I think she had independence anyway, but she had literal independence now because she wasn't married to anybody for the first time in a long time, and she could do what she wanted to without worried about anybody saying anything to her.
That's right. But she did have this independence. Now, in 1983, there was a man named Robert Hutton who was the manager there at the same Kroger that Blanche worked for.
Right.
Yeah. And he alleged that Blanche had come on to him and that she had constantly been flirting and telling him dirty jokes. And this is when she filed a sexual harassment suit for $14 million against him and Kroger.
Mm.
And this was in 1985.
So she's working another angle here.
Yeah, $14 million, dude.
Yeah.
And this is when Hutton was forced to admit under oath many sexual indiscretions with female coworkers, as well as his relationship with Blanche, which she denied according to several people.
He said that she was constantly, flirting with him, telling him dirty jokes and coming on to him. And then, yet she was, filed a sexual lawsuit against him. So I think...
And Kroger.
I think this is just another one of her angles. She would go in there and get him to do whatever he wanted to do and then turn the tables on him.
Yeah, because there was one time she lured him into an office, and she got him to take off his pants. And this when she grabbed the pants and his underwear and ran out of the store. Yeah.
Yeah, buddy.
And he was there exposed.
He just had to walk out exposed and said he even had to yell to the meat cutters to bring him a smock so he could get out of the store.
Yeah, just to be able to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that to me sounds like she took him in there and promised him something and then turned it on him.
Yeah.
Man.
But this Hutton was allowed to resign with a post-dated document so he would receive his full retirement benefits, while Blanche continued her battle with Kroger with this lawsuit. And during this time, a house she was living in that she had bought after James' death, this house had burned down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then a trailer she had bought had a similar fire.
Yeah.
And both fires were arson.
Yeah, and Blanche said it was some pervert, but she didn't give no names.
Yeah.
And she got insurance settlements for both these fires.
Yes, she did. But
did you watch the movie?
I did.
They did. Didn't the way they had this in the movie, was another little thing, and I don't know if that really happened or if it was just added in, but I thought it was kind of relevant. Where her trailer's on fire, and the fire department come and put it out right, and she's talking to one of the police before her and Raymond leave, and he's like, they're talking biz and how stuff's going, and he's like, well, he's kind of on bad times. She goes, well, whenever I get my insurance settlement, I'll be glad to help you out and give you a loan. And he's like, well, that'd be awful nice. And he looks at her and he goes, but a lot of times these kind of fires, they start back up, but they have a random coal or something's in there, and it might just start back up. And you can see the twinkle in her eye, right? And then the cop leaves, and then they get ready to leave, and she goes, wait, I have to run back in the house and grab my coat. So she runs back in the house, and when they come back out and get in the car and start to drive off, you can look up in the mirror, and you can see the house blazing back up.
Dang.
So it's like he kind of gave her a little wink, wink, nod, nod, and so she went back in there, and I think so that's probably what happened on both of these things, these fires. I'm sure she burned her own house down to get the money.
Very, very possible.
So I don't know if that happened or not, but that was kind of a good way to put it.
Yeah. But she, like Dale said, she did receive insurance settlements for both fires. And during the legal battle with Kroger, she saw a psychiatrist who noted some severe depression and suicidal ideations. And later in court, he would slip and admit, this psychiatrist would admit that Blanche implied her relationship with this Richard Hutton was consensual.
Right.
And he read quotes of things she said in court, and one of them was, quote, finally broke up with Hutton because he was just plain sinful. But at the time, she settled her lawsuit with Kroger for $275,000. So how much is that today?
$275,000 then today is $801,094.
So she wasn't hurting for money.
You would think. And plus, she just got 2 insurance settlements. You'd think she'd be, close to $1 million.
Yeah.
Well, in today's money. So then it's probably, what she probably had. I don't know how much she got in her insurance, but if she got $275 off this, I'd say the insurance was pretty good on both the fires.
She'd probably be pushing close to $500,000 then.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
somewhere in there. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money now. I can imagine what it was in then.
But now at this time, Blanche wasn't working, and she was complaining of chronic diarrhea. And to make matters worse, Dale, there was a mass found in one of her breasts, and she had to have a mastectomy. So for Blanche, this, she loved her curves, she loved her body, because this was pretty rough for her.
It was a big blow.
Yeah.
I think she was pretty vain about it, so yeah, I'm sure it was a big blow.
But now, Dale, she would eventually have reconstructive surgery to fix her breast,
right,
to make her figure more
evened out.
Yeah, like it was, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're moving up to Easter Sunday of 1985, and this is when she went to the Carolina Church of Christ with her sister, and this is where she caught the eye of a Reverend Dwight Moore.
Mm-hmm.
And from all accounts, he pursued her and not her pursuing him.
Right.
Yeah. And he would call her all the time, and he even left notes at her home.
Wow.
But there's some counts differ on whether there was a overlap on this, because her daughters told the L.A. Times that Blanche and Raymond's relationship had cooled off when she started seeing Dwight. And Dwight, he was under the impression that Blanche was just friends with Raymond Reed.
Right. She's playing him right off the bat.
Yeah.
I think she went in and she gave him some oogle eyes from the congregation, her being the new kid in town. He noticed her right away with her immaculate dress and, all that mess. And I think he just fell for her right away.
Yeah.
And then when he didn't think she had a boyfriend, even though she'd been with Raymond all these years, I think she was telling him that she didn't have a boyfriend either. They were just friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when Raymond got deathly ill to the point of hospitalization, the Reverend Dwight Moore, he drove Blanche to the hospital to see him.
Yeah.
And he would even accompany her to Raymond's funeral later on.
Mm-hmm.
But Raymond's illness started on January the 1st of 1986.
January 1st.
And this is when Blanche had made some potato soup. And he got ill with some gastro symptoms, including vomiting, diarrhea. And he was sick off and on for the next few months.
Symptoms sound familiar, don't they?
Yeah. He even took 4 weeks off from work, something that he never done.
Right.
It was out of character for him to be out of work. But he actually took off work for 4 weeks.
A month, yeah.
And he actually went back to work on May the 29th, 1986 for the last time. And on May 30th, 1986, Raymond got sick again, and he was having the same symptoms as before.
Man.
But now he had lost feeling in his hands and feet.
So he's been pretty ill here for about 5 months.
Yeah. And this one, the doctors sent him to what was reported as Wesley Long Community College. This is where Raymond told the doctors that he hadn't been able to keep anything down since a supper he had eaten a week earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Can you even imagine?
No.
And after his initial diagnosis of acute gastroenteritis, Raymond continued to go down a hill.
Getting worse and worse.
Yeah. He was diagnosed with multiple systems failure, according to court documents. He had had excessive diarrhea and vomiting, loose stools, skin rash, edema, and even dehydration, bone marrow damage, even blood cell abnormalities.
Man.
He had a lot of stuff going on.
Yes.
Shortness of breath, respiratory failure, and rapid heartbeat, and even low blood pressure.
Kidney malfunction? My goodness.
Yeah. So he had...
And the numbness and tingling in his hands and everything.
So by June the 5th, Raymond was doing a little better, and the doctor told him and Blanche that he would be going home in a few days.
Well, good.
Yeah. This was after he'd had a procedure.
Painful procedure.
Yeah, because he had actually developed an infection.
Mm-hmm.
This is when he had a urinary tract infection, and his penis had been infected.
Yeah, it's swollen and had an infection in the foreskin.
Yeah, and he actually had to go and have a
circumcision.
Yeah, which was pretty painful.
Yeah.
They say on adult men it's pretty rough.
That's what they say.
Yeah. So on June the 13th, Raymond started
kidney failure.
Yeah, he couldn't produce urine.
Mm.
So the doctors wanted him transferred to North Carolina Baptist Hospital. This is in Winston-Salem.
Yeah.
In hopes that the doctors there could work out what was going on with him and find out what the cause of his symptoms were.
Yeah, usually if you hear you're going to Baptist, it's something serious.
Yeah.
Very serious.
And there was a specialist there at Baptist Hospital. He was an internal medicine and nephrology doctor who studied the functions of kidneys. And on June the 21st, a code blue was alerted when Raymond stopped breathing. But he was revived and was on a ventilator and was paralyzed. He's
having a hell of a time.
He actually gets to feeling better and then gets sick again.
Yeah. This is 6 months of this now.
Yeah. But Raymond being in the hospital, many of the nurses who would later testify at trial, they would say that Blanche was coming into the hospital with food and trays of cookies and all kind of stuff.
Right. Instead of going in there being demanding and raising hell about, the care and going on, she just kind of went the total opposite other way and started to charm them all and just come in and be super overly nice to them.
Befriend them, yeah.
Yes, bringing them cookies and food and this kind of stuff.
Yes, she would. And she was on a first-name basis with all these caregivers.
Right. If you notice, she always did that, even as far back as the grocery store. She's good at manipulation.
Yes, she is. But they didn't suspect anything, and even Blanche would bring Raymond homemade banana pudding and even peanut butter milkshakes.
Mm-hmm.
And
she would bring them food too. She would bring them a different container and give them food too.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of like something she did.
Mm-hmm.
Very friendly.
And this is when Blanche even suggested that to the doctors that Raymond may have Guillain-Barré syndrome. And this is a rare disorder in which your body's immune system attacks your nerves. And there's weakness and tingling in your extremities, and they're usually the first symptoms, and these sensations can spread quickly and even paralyzing your whole body.
Wow.
And this Guillain-Barré syndrome looks similar to arsenic poisoning. Yeah.
And it's pretty impressive that she could come up with this, what it was, because, there's no internet or nothing then.
No.
So how she look it up, who knows, but unless she had the old encyclopedia collection.
Britannica encyclopedias.
Right.
Yeah, that was the internet back then.
You'd have to do a lot of cross-referencing to find that.
Yeah. The doctors did do a toxicology report, and it did show high levels of arsenic. But Raymond was treated by several doctors at this time, Dale.
Yeah.
And his report and his chart was so thick that this lab report got lost in the charts.
Which is a damn shame.
Yeah. So, but if they had been able to see that, they would have known that Raymond had been poisoned while he was in the hospital.
Right. So he was getting worse while he's in the hospital, and his levels are going up, and they knew it, but they lost the report.
Yes.
Being the conflict of so many different doctors. Sad.
So, Dale, since they didn't know about this report, this toxicology report, they were treating him for this Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Right.
And Raymond did show some improvement after undergoing plasmapheresis. And this is a pretty grueling process, and it's stretched over a day because how it works is blood is removed from the body, and then a machine separates the red blood cells and plasma. Then the machine basically builds the blood back using red and white blood cells from the patient and putting them in a laboratory solution rather than the patient's own plasma. And then the machine pumps the now clean blood back into the patient.
Wow.
And it did seem to help Raymond as he was able to get off the ventilator and onto a respirator so he could breathe.
Yeah, and it seemed like his paralysis, seemed to lessen a little bit here.
Yep. So by September, Raymond seemed to be getting a little better, and Blanche now worked to get his will changed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this is where she included, along with his two sons and a lawyer, they drafted up a will, and they took it to Raymond's bedside. But Raymond wasn't able to talk, and he was paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what they did, they had a lawyer come in and a notary public and even a couple of nurses to come in to witness this power of attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And the lawyer signed the will.
Yeah, signed it for him because he couldn't.
To make it legal,
right.
Yeah. But Blanche was named the executor and beneficiary of Raymond's estate, and she would also receive a portion of his life insurance payout. And on October the 1st, the head nurse of the ICU saw Blanche help Raymond eat some of her own homemade banana pudding.
Mm-hmm.
And by October the 3rd, Raymond was once again having trouble breathing, and she later testified that he even said, "Help me, please, or I'm going to die."
Now you think about it, this is October now, so we're going on 10 months of pure hell here.
Yeah. So Raymond was moved back to the ICU the next day, and his family were told on the 6th that they would have to come and say their goodbyes. Yep. And Raymond's son said that he could barely recognize his dad.
Wow.
He was so swollen, and his eyeballs were swollen, and his skin was starting to split from all the blisters. I can't even imagine,
That's
dude.
awful, man.
So on October the 7th of 1986, Raymond Reed died, and his cause of death was listed as heart failure. And the doctors wondered if he had actually suffered from this Guillain-Barré syndrome. And they wanted to perform an autopsy.
Yeah, you sure? I mean, you definitely want to do that to find out what killed him, because it was so baffling to them, and he had went through this torture for all these months, and with them out not really able to help him at all,
Yeah.
So that that would be the smartest thing to find out what the heck's going on here, even though he's already passed away.
Yep. But Blanche wasn't having none of it.
Oh.
No, she didn't want an autopsy. She said that his body had been through enough, and he wouldn't want to have an autopsy, even though his sons were wanting to get this autopsy. She bullied them into agreeing that no autopsy would be performed.
Yeah, she basically said, well, your daddy wouldn't want his body mutilated and all this stuff. And then
He's already mutilated, dude.
I think these kids are in still such shock of what's going on, and then her being the master manipulator. Think about it. If she can they're not even married. If she can talk these two boys into going in and letting her be the executor of the will and be over everything and sign everything, even the power of attorney over to her, and she's not even really related.
Yeah.
She's good.
She's got some power.
Yeah. So then you basically just bullied them into this. And I would see a interview with these kids later, and it was like, once we found out what happened, it was just, how stupid were we to just be blinded. But at the time, everything she was telling us just made sense because she was that good.
Yeah. So get this, Dale. The Reverend Reed that she was seeing, he accompanied Blanche to the funeral service.
Yeah, to her friend, Raymond.
Yeah, and then even went to the burial at Pine Hill Cemetery there in Burlington. And all this time, the Reverend Dwight Moore claimed to believe that Blanche was just good friends with Raymond Reed.
Mm-hmm.
And that she just wanted to take care of him.
Yeah.
But Dwight and Blanche...
Such a good friend.
I know, but Dwight and Blanche were having a sexual relationship, and the preacher didn't feel right about not being married, Dale.
Right.
So in early November, this was just a month after Raymond had died, Dwight and Blanche, they got engaged.
Yeah, he bought her engagement ring.
He did.
Yeah. Well, you remember, she didn't ever want to be married after this first time, right?
No, she didn't.
The whole time she was with Raymond, Raymond wanted to marry her too, and she kind of dodged that. And then now the preacher, him being in his position, just didn't feel right about not being married, so I think he was trying to put the pressure on her to be married.
Yep, and they planned to get married at his church right after Thanksgiving services.
Mm-hmm.
But what was crazy, Dwight mysteriously fell ill, and he kept vomiting violently.
Right after that.
Yeah, and the couple, they postponed their wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And after Dwight underwent 2 operations on his intestines, these operations seemed to help a little bit, and the couple did get married on April the 19th, 1989.
Okay.
And this was in a small wedding with 2 of the Reverend Moore's church members serving as witnesses. They were the only ones there.
Wow.
And they were also the only guest. And
it's a kind of shocking.
It is. And they went on a short honeymoon.
Right.
Kind of a long weekend. They drove up to New Jersey because Dwight Moore, the preacher, he had some family there.
Right. And I think he even had a grandchild he had never even met there. So it was good for him to get up there and see his family and stuff.
Yep.
So that's because I was wondering when we first got into this why they would go from here to New Jersey for a honeymoon, but that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, while they were in New Jersey, he got sick again, and they had planned on taking a scenic route to come back home, But when he got sick the night before, he just told her to take the fastest route you can get back to Burlington. I'm really sick. And then later it was said that, he was basically laying in the back seat, vomiting the whole way back. And it was kind of odd to me that why would he go just take me? I mean, from New Jersey to North Carolina is not just a short trip.
No.
So why wouldn't you just say, take me to the hospital now instead of get me back to Burlington? Unless he just didn't think it was something serious. But if you're that bad, I would say take me somewhere now. But anyway, so yeah, when he got back, they got back, and I don't know what happened when he got back.
He evidently got to feeling better because on that April the 24th, he was doing some work around the house.
Right.
Doing some chores and doing some things he wanted to get done. And
yeah, they had moved in together by this time.
Yeah, and Blanche had got him a fast food chicken sandwich. And Dale, he was hospitalized that night with the same symptoms as before.
Right.
And he was sent to the ICU at North Carolina Memorial Hospital. And his family was told to prepare themselves for the worst. And the doctors noted symptoms that Raymond's doctors had been confused by.
Yeah, now this was a much larger hospital than he'd been to before.
Yeah, this ain't your just regular down-the-road hospital. This is a big deal.
Yeah, so they ordered a full toxicology screen here.
They did. And they noticed the toxicology report had arsenic levels that were 126 times the normal level at the time.
126 times.
Yeah, and at the time, it was the highest level recorded in someone who had survived arsenic poisoning.
Man, this dude.
Dwight had ingested a deadly amount of arsenic, and he was lucky to be alive.
Yes.
And now the doctors knew how to treat him.
Right. Yeah, it was kind of funny in the movie, when he went in and they come out and the doctor's talking to him, and then it says this, and she goes, well, he was out there with that bug stuff, and I told him to be careful and to wear a mask. And he turned and looked at her and said, look, this amount, somebody either had to ingest this or have it intravenously put in. It wasn't no smell, no pesticides. So
Yeah.
I was like, wait a damn minute.
So Dwight was going through some dialysis to clean his blood to get this arsenic out of him.
Mm-hmm.
And they also put a sitter in his room.
That's right.
It's where no one could come and see him, including Blanche.
Right, and she was pissed off about this.
Yeah. So according to the Greensboro News and Record, this is the newspaper there, on May the 21st, 1989, police were able to interview Dwight, and they asked if there was anyone who may be able to be linked to Blanche who had died.
Right.
They were trying to find anybody
Had died under some odd circumstances,
Yes.
per se.
And Dwight admitted that Blanche had a friend named Raymond Reed who had died after suffering similar symptoms. And now the police were looking into Blanche.
Even though Dwight, he just didn't believe that she could do anything to be like that. So
He was in love with her.
Yeah, he was like, wait, why are you looking at her? He just couldn't believe that she could do anything. So you're just wasting your time.
And get this, Dale, the police were looking at death records for 22 people that Blanche knew, and they decided to exhume those they believed Blanche had murdered. And they decided to exhume the bodies of Raymond Reed.
Yeah, I think how it worked is they exhumed Raymond, and once they exhumed him, they're like, wait a damn minute. And then they started really looking at it.
They exhumed her father, P.D. Kaiser.
Her ex-husband, James Taylor.
Yes.
And even her mother-in-law.
Isla Taylor.
Yes.
They did.
They exhumed them all.
And on June the 13th, Raymond Reed's body was exhumed, and it was well preserved, Dale. And an autopsy showed that he had arsenic levels that were 30 times higher than normal.
Right.
And his brain, they did an autopsy on it, and it was 67 times higher than normal.
67 times.
Wow. And they also, he also had what they call Mies lines.
Yes.
On his fingernails, and these are like little rings.
Like rings on a tree.
Yeah, and he can tell how many times a person has been poisoned. It's crazy.
It kind of helps them with the timeline, narrow down what's going on and when it was happened.
Yes.
But then they found out that he had an enormous amount of arsenic was given to him on June 24th.
Yes.
While he was in the hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Blanche's first husband, James Taylor, was exhumed on July 6th, and an autopsy shows 60 times the normal level of arsenic in his system, and it was definitely enough to kill him. P.D. Kaiser, Blanche's dad, and Isla Taylor were both exhumed, and both bodies showed high levels of arsenic, though were not found to be lethal in Isla.
Right. But P.D. was an alcoholic and a smoker, and they're thinking, his levels weren't extremely high either, but they think it might have been enough to be in his with his medical condition, did what induced that heart attack that killed him.
Yeah, with his blood pressure and all that stuff he had going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Isla, she was an 83-year-old woman with a lot of ailments, too.
Right, so probably sped up her death as well.
Could have, yeah.
She was just starting with them people.
They also exhumed an old co-worker of Blanche's from Kroger, but his autopsy didn't show any poisoning.
Right.
So this one, the police showed Dwight the evidence against Blanche, and he finally believed them, and she was arrested on July the 18th and was held in the Alamance County Jail. But Dwight had firmly insisted she had not poisoned him.
Yeah, even though with all the evidence.
Yeah.
He was still standing by her.
Okay.
Even though, Dwight had firmly insisted that she didn't poison him, but I think now he was seeing the light. So he finally decided to file for divorce on December of 1990.
Yeah.
This is 9 months after he got sick.
Yeah.
And like 6 months after Blanche was actually arrested.
And 1 month after her trial, Blanche was charged with 2 counts of murder for her father, Parker, or PD, and her former husband, James Taylor, in Alamance County.
She was indicted for felonious assault against Dwight in that county also.
Yeah. And for the murder of Raymond Reed, she was indicted in Forsyth County,
right,
where he had died. And after this, and much legal wrangling because of district attorneys were passing this case back and forth.
Yeah, nobody wanted it.
All of Alamance County cases were transferred to Forsyth County. And Blanche would first go on trial for Raymond Reed's murder. That's the one they had the best evidence in this case, aside from the autopsy scores.
Of course.
Yeah. And there were tons of witnesses and nurses to family members who would testify against Blanche. And on August the 29th, Blanche entered a not guilty plea. And police believe Blanche killed each man to be with a new one, as evidenced by her series of affairs, but it was not known if there was another man she was planning to leave Dwight for.
I think she just didn't want to be married.
I think so too. So on October the 15th, 1990, Blanche's trial began in Forsyth County. And the prosecution's case was that Blanche began poisoning Raymond with arsenic in early 1986 and kept doing it through his hospitalization by bringing him homemade food. And the lead prosecutor, her name was Janet Branch, said that Blanche was, quote, evil, immoral, and manipulative, and the prosecution introduced evidence that Blanche killed her first husband, James, in a similar manner to show how Raymond was killed. And they also said she was working her way towards murdering her current husband, Dwight, as well.
Yep.
And Blanche would poison them by putting arsenic in their food and take care of them while they were sick.
And giving them more poison.
Yeah. So the judge allowed this evidence in rule by 404B of the North Carolina Rules of Evidence. And this is similar in what happened to the Elise Underwood's trial. The judge decided that the pattern was strong enough to admit the other 2 cases into evidence, though he had ruled against joining all the cases for one trial.
Right. And
the prosecution was not allowed to introduce evidence that Blanche's father or mother-in-law, though they were found to have arsenic in their bodies, Isla's level, they were low.
So even though they think that she killed him, they didn't allow that because the levels were so low.
That's right. And also they didn't pursue that either because they would have to bring in all the allegations of abuse. She was forced into prostitution.
Right. And being this is way 20 years before any of this other, it'd be hard to connect it as a pattern.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And also Blanche had confided to her latest husband, Dwight, that things her father had done to her, but it was never known. Dwight never spoke publicly about what she said or gave him any details.
Right. Well, I'm sure she told him a lot of stuff because that's what she did.
Yeah, her being put into prostitution to pay his bills and gambling debts, yeah.
Right.
And newspapers reported in opening arguments that the prosecution gave 2 motives that Blanche murdered the men because she had become interested in another lover. It was kind of like this Black Widow angle they were going with. And that she had murdered the men because she subconsciously hated men because her father, PD.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. And her father was an adulterer who abandoned their family. And there was no mention of abuse, but there was obviously a third motive easily proved, but they just left that out like we talked about.
Right. And kind of in the movie it kind of went with that where her and Dwight are talking, and everything's going great, and then he goes, well, my first wife, why that happened is because I run around on her, and she just turns around and snaps, because my father did that. So they make it really look like that was the angle. She, because of her stuff her dad did to her, really what molded her into who she was.
Yep.
Which I get.
Now, Dale, the prosecution presented that there was something called anti-ant.
Yeah, that's a product to kill ants.
Yeah, and this was sold at Kroger.
Mm-hmm.
And Blanche would even recommend this product to customers to kill ants.
Right.
And it was actually arsenic.
Arsenic.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the defense's entire case was that all the evidence was circumstantial,
Mm-hmm.
and no one saw Blanche poison anyone.
Yeah, directly.
And they said she was a good Christian woman who had been devoted to the men in her life.
Right. And then there was a supposed confession that the prosecution got a hold of.
Yes.
And it was a letter that they tried to enter into evidence from a guy named Garvin Thomas.
He was a homeless guy.
Yeah.
And he tried to visit Blanche in jail many times,
Mm-hmm.
and supposedly wrote the letter, and it was only after he had died that Blanche produced this letter.
Right.
And the prosecution had handwriting analysts compare the letter to known writings of Garvin Thomas, and then had Blanche write out the letter.
Right.
Yeah, and it was proven that the letters were pretty much the same. The
Yeah.
handwritings were the same. Because they said the way she wrote and abbreviated things would be pretty much just identical.
Yeah, town names and anything like that. Because what had happened is she had wrote a bunch of letters to some of her friend, and her friend kept all of them, so they had plenty of things to go by to comparable.
Yeah.
And it said that basically the letter had started out being really sweet and stuff, and about how he cared for her and he really loved her, and he was just jealous of all these other people and calling her such a sweet Christian woman, and and just he did this for her and all this, and then he just goes on, and then it kind of turns kind of vulgar toward the end. It's like, wait a minute, because
A little obscene.
Yeah, like he would wanted to wrap my arms around you and kiss your lips, take your clothes off, and kiss your this and run my tongue on this and do this. I mean, just a whole lot of it went from super nice, I love you, and I did all this for you because you're such a Christian woman, to we want to do a whole lot of stuff.
Because this was a hallmark of Blanche's personality.
Right, like we said before, how she was like super Christian woman, but she'd turn around and tell a super nasty joke and not think nothing about it. So
obscene remarks
like,
and
wait a
everything.
minute,
Yeah.
So this is just kind of almost exactly like something she would say.
Yeah.
But one thing they didn't say is that Garvin Thomas, he did not write in cursive, and Blanche did.
Yes.
Now, I don't know that the letter's in cursive, but it might just be weird the way it was written. I need to...
But the handwriting analysis showed that it was the same person that wrote the letters.
Right. Well, also it was
Well,
shown
the letter in her handwriting, yeah.
and then it was also shown that the letter didn't even be, I don't think it was even mailed to him a week after he was dead.
Mm-hmm. But Dale, during this trial, the most compelling evidence was Blanche herself, after all the testimony from credible nurses who said they saw Blanche feeding Raymond, and she denied ever feeding him at the hospital.
At all.
Yeah.
Yeah, she said they're wrong. I never fed him at all.
But they had 50-something people come up saying they brought them food and him food.
Yeah, and all seen the milkshakes and the banana pudding and all that stuff,
Yeah.
So she just shot herself in the foot right there for sure.
Yeah. So this is when the prosecution and the prosecutor, Janet Branch,
Yeah, instead of going in for the kill like everybody thought when she said this, she just rested her case.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
well, I think you just sealed your own fate right there.
Yep. So on November the 14th, 1990, Blanche Taylor Moore was found guilty of first-degree murder of Raymond Reed.
Mm-hmm.
And on June the 16th, she was sentenced to death. All of her appeals were denied, and she had gotten the death penalty. The other cases were never tried.
Right.
And there was a new district attorney, and he could not see justifying the cost of doing
Going
this.
through another trial when
Yeah.
she's already got death penalty.
That's right. But now on January 18th, 1991, the presiding judge concurred with the jury and sentenced Blanche Taylor Moore to die by lethal injection. And Dale, even today, she currently resides at the North Carolina Correctional Institute for Women.
Hmm.
Yes.
So she's been sitting there for 33 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's 91 years old.
Today, yeah.
The oldest woman on death row.
Well, I'm assuming they're not going to put her to death.
No,
They just wait her out.
Yep, so in prison, Blanche has written music and spends a lot of her time writing poetry. She has had health issues requiring her to undergo both chemotherapy and radiation therapy due to some type of cancer. And because of the automatic appeals in progress, she has avoided execution for over 31 years. And she maintains her innocence to this day.
Yeah, I think it's 33 years now.
I know. And one of Blanche's attorneys, his name was David Tamer. He misappropriated client funds, including hers, and was convicted of embezzlement. He also had a history of psychological problems. And in 2010, Blanche and 11 other death row inmates from Forsyth County filed a motion to convert their sentences to life imprisonment based on the state's Racial Justice Act. Essentially, the issue was the racial composition of the juries. And Dwight had told the Winston-Salem news station that he had no objections to his wife seeking to have her death sentence overturned.
Yeah, he didn't care.
But Dwight would go on to survive, but he had a lot of health problems after that.
Yeah,
he did. He had a lot of stuff after that.
I think he moved away and remarried eventually and had a pretty decent life, but I think he has since passed away.
Yes, he has.
So she still outlived them all.
That's right. And even the prosecutor in this case, she had some troubles, Dale.
Yeah, which is sad.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think even though she won this thing, she still was caught a lot of grief over it.
Yeah. I think she was driving down the road one day and ran her car into some kind of embankment or a telephone pole or something, and got out and walked into traffic and was killed.
Yeah. Well, I think she had some mental issues before that.
And they ruled it as a suicide.
Right.
This was the prosecutor.
That's pretty sad.
Yeah. Anyway, this is a crazy case, Blanche Taylor Moore.
Very.
Yeah. And we mentioned the movie.
Yes.
There was a movie made about this, and it was called The Black Widow Murders of the Blanche Taylor Moore Story, and it starred Elizabeth Montgomery.
Yeah, from Bewitched.
Yeah.
Which is kind of hard for me to see the beloved Samantha Stevens as the devious Blanche Taylor Moore.
Yeah. But it's a really good movie, and it's available on YouTube.
Yeah, you can watch it for nothing.
Yeah. It's a pretty good movie. It's a 90s movie. Really good.
Basically, it's like a made-for-TV movie, but it was pretty good, I thought. She done a good job in the movie.
She did do a good job. It was made in 1993, I think, and what's crazy, though, Elizabeth Montgomery passed away in 1995.
Yeah, sad. Great
just
loss.
shortly after making this movie.
Yeah. So, man, this episode just keeps getting sadder, doesn't it?
And even Elizabeth Montgomery was interviewed about this movie, and she claimed that making this movie is kind of like a comedy in a way.
I don't know about that. I didn't see it as a comedy at all.
No.
That quote bugs me. I don't know why she would say that.
But I did watch this movie, and it's really, really close to the story of Blanche Taylor Moore. I mean, it follows along the timeline and everything, so check it out.
It's worth watching for sure.
All right, dude. That is the story of Blanche Taylor Moore.
All right, let's get out of here, man.
All right, we're going to roll.
Let's roll.
We want everyone to be safe. Please be careful and always be aware of your surroundings.
Because the next episode could be about you.
This is the Crack House Chronicles.